Hey everyone, and welcome back to Blackstar City. We are currently at episode 8. I am really excited about this episode today because we do some very cool and creative things, so let's get into it. Thank you guys for stopping in and catching today's episode. I really appreciate it, and for anybody that might be new to the series, welcome. In this series you're going to find some pretty out there stuff. It's very futuristic and sci-fi, and among other things it really just demonstrates how some of the mods and assets on the workshop and available to us can really stretch the boundaries of this game. So anyway, I hope you guys are doing well, and I do apologise for those of you who are hanging out for either San Francisco or my Europe series to return, but I'm on a sci-fi buzz, so I'm rolling with this series a little bit. I really wish I could say I've got 3 or 4 episodes up my sleeve that are all finished and done, ready to go, but I am nowhere near that organised, and I sort of really enjoy just rolling with things that I sort of get passionate about in the moment. Most of the time that's an idea for either one of my series, and I kind of realise also how erratic that might seem for you guys that are viewing it on YouTube. Like I might not be as regular as maybe you'd like me to be, but it's kind of important for me to roll with that passion, otherwise my builds just don't come out that good. They just seem really forced, and it kind of feels like a job to go to my PC and build it, and that's definitely not how I want to play this game. Of course, I mean, that's not how anybody wants to play this game. We all want to be inspired, right? I'm not sure about any of you guys, but for me, if I know exactly what I want to build before I get onto City Skylines, the process just flows like water. Now anyway, that's enough ranting, but speaking of flowing water, you can see me here. I'm putting in Sully's awesome spillway canal thing for his LA project that he's made, and I've been desperate to try this in one of my series, and this is the one that I didn't really think I would do it in Blackstar, but it kind of suits our dystopian theme here pretty well. The asset comes with a whole lot of rough looking decals that we can use to make this whole spillway look really grungy and rough, and unbelievably this was Sully's first ever asset, and it's just of the highest quality, so well done Sully, awesome mate. So if you guys remember back to our raceway episode where we built the Tron style racetrack, I also built an area where I raised a whole lot of roads up, about 30 in-game meters above ground level, and created sort of a second level type of thing, or a sub-level, maybe that's a better word for it. But you're basically going to see me very quickly shuffle the roads and the train tracks, or the floating train tracks here, into a new position. That's going to be for setting up for that type of area later on. Then we're going to pop back to Sully's spillway and sort of do it proper justice with all the little wee extras he's released with it. We've got some pretty cool looking little water pipes we can add in here, and these are real water pipes. We can plumb these into the city water supply and actually fill the canal with real water. How cool is that? That sort of added functionality gets a massive tick from me. Then we use some of those grungy decals that he's released as well, that include paint all over the sides of the canals as well as moss and stuff in the bottom. Then we're going to pop back to that area where we adjusted the roadways and stuff, and then start placing the buildings down. I'm not sure if I mentioned it in the Tron Raceway episode or not, but these types of sub-levels are most definitely inspired by Fluxtrance. If any of you guys have been hanging around on YouTube City Skylines scene for long enough, you'll remember Avalon, and just what an amazingly groundbreaking sort of futuristic style series that was. And the way that Fluxtrance sort of represented the series and the way that he spoke on things was just really inspiring. So I am most certainly doing paid respect here to one of the original gangsters of City Skylines YouTube. I guess I would say that I have taken mine in a slightly different direction. Most of Flux's second levels were sort of pedestrian only, whereas I've sort of tried to raise this road up here. I've also turned the road to a ground style road and used Terra networks to get rid of the terrain that is pulled up with the road, and this is to give direct access to any buildings that may be on the second level, and we put plenty of those in. These car parks here are going to make up some of the dodgiest areas in Blackstar. I want them really dark, I want them dingy, heaps of dodgy advertising and trash and stuff everywhere. I already hate car parks, so this is quite a natural extension of that. I would have to say that City Walk City Wall has also been a massive influence on me, and a lot of these sort of grungy areas, particularly down on the ground, are inspired by him and his Mars series. And to finish off that sub-level, I'm using the same road markings with the intersection marking tool that we had in the last area like this. That makes this specific sub-level very, very easy to recognise and spot. We've also got predominantly flying cars in the city, so I've got those gaps in the road because they look cool as hell. And with the train whizzing by this area, it looks really, really neat. We're going to introduce a massive lake here that doubles as a national park into the city. One of our floating train stations is going to be on one edge of it, and I'm going to sort of extend the grid out over and past the lake, and it's going to offer the opportunity to do something really cool with the bridge that we'll do later on. But this lake is also going to represent one of the main sort of national parks in the area, and it's also going to pay homage to the head man of the Omega group that we'll get into a little bit later on. Anyway, on screen you can see that I'm messing with a couple of statues and procedural objects, and I've whittled one of them down till it's just a couple of hands sticking out of the ground. And this idea is very much based on a walkway in Vietnam in real life, but I also thought it could work really well in a dystopian type city if it was holding up like a road or a walkway or something like that. And as a matter of fact, one of the roads that we've got going over our lake represents the perfect opportunity to do something with these sands. So let's use procedural objects, get these a good size, and see if we can make it look like they're holding up the road. It took a little bit of fiddling around to make sure that the pedestrians and cars weren't driving through a massive thumb sticking through the road, but eventually, with the help of node controller and stuff, it looks really, really cool, I think. I did try upgrading this road to a whole heap of different other roads to see if I could find a more appropriate looking one, but ultimately this old industrial road just looks the best. I just thought I needed to maybe spice it up with a little bit of intersection marking tool, but I quite like the idea of it being really simple because it sort of focuses on the hands holding it up. Man, I really love the way Nato's train station sits right on the edge of the water here, and the train tracks around above the water before it leaves the station. But I think the one thing missing is pillars holding it up. It looks a little bit funny just floating in the middle of nowhere at the moment. So I decided to add some pillars. And while I was sort of doing that, I sort of thought, well, maybe the people coming in on the train, you know, that could be a good opportunity for advertisers to get lots of views on the ads. So maybe some of these pillars extend up higher than the train and they offer an opportunity for adverts. So this particular pillar here is going to get plastered with them front and back until it's just a little wee hole basically that the train goes through. And then we're pretty much going to quickly move on to the next area, and I haven't detailed that last area fully. I've left it so that we can come back later on and finish up that area. Now with this next bit here, I kind of want to add like a beach area into the city that's available to the average citizen. So obviously with the conditions on the planet, we're not going to get a real beach or anything like it, so this edge of the lake might be the nearest thing they can get. So yes, it's going to be a beach, but it's also going to be a little bit grungy, a little bit rocky, and not the perfect utopian beach we might be thinking of. And in some classic dystopian fashion, we're going to have all the buildings and infrastructure come right up to the edge of the beach. There's no real respect for nature here, it's more of an exploitation of it. If you could imagine a beach right in the middle of Times Square, that's sort of the vibe that I'm going for. There's hardly any beach here, there's hardly any waves, no one's swimming here. This is just a pure dystopian view of what a beach may have been. The closest thing you might get to an earthbound beach experience here might be chucking a chip out to a fake drone seagull. I mean, what a fantastic day at the beach. So to capture that vibe in game, we're going to make this area inviting, but not too inviting. The sand is not as golden as you would imagine, there's a few rocks around, and it just overall doesn't really look that inviting. I do also want to make this look really realistic, so I'm using Ronix 69's amazing beach decals, and I want to make it look like the tide's been rolling in here. And with Kepler being massive, I'd imagine the tide swing is probably huge, even in this maybe little wee lake. So we've got our beach all made, we've set our boundaries around it for where we're going to bring the buildings into. I really want to finish this whole area off now. And a lot of these buildings that I'm placing right next to the beach are from Jimbo West Coast, because they are black and brutal and they just set a perfect contrast towards the beach. They look nasty, they look evil, they look intimidating, and that is me running out of things to describe this area. But I hope you guys get what I'm going for. So let's also jam a whole lot of commercial areas around here, just to make sure we have got a real mix of citizens coming into this area. And wow, what a cool area. I'm really starting to love this part of the city. This next bit here is definitely inspired by the game Cyberpunk 2077. All the pedestrian crossings in the game have this really cool like walk sign that sort of flashes when it's okay to walk. The unique thing about that is it pops up in the road in like a holographic sort of a form. And I was wondering about how I could do this in City Skylines, and I've used procedural objects with the modules function to try and do something similar. I've used the custom PO sign and written walk on it, and then I'm using the modules function to make it go under the ground a little wee bit and then pop back up just above the ground. And when it does this over and over, it kind of looks like it's flashing. I do fear that my poor computer is going to catch on fire one of these days, but hey, you only live once, right? So let's not stop there. Let's keep pounding these props in here and really bring this area to life. I've always loved these kind of waterfront areas because they're really visible, so I always go pretty hardcore with them with the detailing. And in terms of the vibe we're going for here, I want lots of wires hanging everywhere, lots of advertising, there's lots of shady areas here, there's a bit of rubbish and trash around. But there's also the staple things you would imagine, like fence railings around where it meets the beach, there's clear access down onto the beach, there's trash cans around, we've also got like vending machines, and I put some of Jimbo West Coast's sky walkways up between these buildings, and they don't have any functionality, they're just there to look cool, but I think they do look pretty cool. It wouldn't really be much of an area with any interest without adding real pedestrian paths in here to bring the citizens through. So while we're doing that, we also add some cube services in here as well, because a lot of the buildings I put down here were changed to procedural objects, which takes away their functionality. So the pedestrian paths plus those cube services means this area comes to life. We get people rolling through here, and eventually we're going to get them down on the beach as well. Not many of them, and they're pretty brave, but they do go down there. So as you guys can see here, we've really only got one access point down onto this little beach here, and that is most definitely by design. But what we're going to do is I'm going to turn one of these buildings into procedural objects, turn it horizontally 90 degrees, and then place it between two of these buildings here. This is going to hopefully create like a little wee tunnel that you've got to go through to go down onto the beach. This offers more building space or office space to the building, but it also offers an opportunity for advertising right here as everybody enters the beach. There would most definitely be a part of this type of city, Blackstar, where there's homage paid to the Omega Group. Considering that they are funding the city, their egotistical maniac agenda would also definitely include statues of themselves somewhere or another. So this statue here that you see me building, ultimately I do not go with, but I wanted to show you guys the process so that you can sort of see the thinking behind how we got to the end product. And I wanted to try and add a waterfall out of the hand of the statue here or something like that, and ultimately I just didn't think this worked at all. Plus I really think the lake is far too big, so I'm going to make it smaller here. I've also got an idea of how I can implement that statue a bit better, so I'm going to make a point to make a peninsula here and raise it up so that I've got a little bit of sort of cliff area to work with. Then I want to zoom in a little bit closer to that cliff area and really make it look steep, and I'm going to use some of Grey Flame's rocks here and sort of try and make the best looking cliff that I can. This is probably the first sort of real nature area that I've included in the city with sort of natural features, and I've got to say I like it. I'm hoping to include more, and ultimately this little nature area here looks like it's sort of well and truly been exploited for profit, and that's obviously exactly what we're going for here. You know, it's kind of like if you came down here for the first time, there's only one spot of the beach you can go to for a good photo because all the rest show like garbage or whatever in the background, and maybe you quickly realize that that is the angle that the photo was taken from that drew you to the place in the first place, and the rest of the beach just looks, you know, like really average. But anyway, on top of that cliff and a little bit of the surrounding area, we're going to add some really nice bush and nature in. A lot of these trees are maybe the ones we'd see on Earth that were brought with us along with our journey, but I've also tried to include some really colourful trees and stuff as well to make it look at least a little wee bit alien. Now, let's go back to that cliff that I've just made. The reason I have made that cliff is because this is where I want to put our new statue of our founding Omega Group people in. I mentioned earlier that I did not like the one that was in the middle of the lake, and our alternative is going to be like a Mount Rushmore style carving in the side of this cliff. So first things first, I need to find an appropriate statue, and there was this Karl Marx head here. I think it's from Bramid. It's either Bramid or Don B. Either way, the two of them make fantastic statues, and I needed a fantastic one because I knew I was going to blow this up really, really big, and I wanted some facial features and stuff to it, you know. I did want to go with two heads here, but eventually I just went with one because it just looked better, I think. And to finish it off, I put a prop light here so that it sort of shines up at night, and that is literally it, and I think it looks really cool. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and viewing this episode. If you could hit that thumbs up for me, I'd even be more appreciative. My number one hope is most definitely to inspire you guys. If you're a city building lover like I am, go and get yourself City Skylines if you don't have it already, and get yourself into it. It is fantastic. Check out the description of this video if you guys want to connect with me in different ways. But I hope you guys have yourselves a very, very good weekend, and I will talk to you in the comments. See you guys later.